Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Mind of the King. My name is Gavin Shaw, and I'm here with my boy
Denroy V. Gums. It's a pleasure to be back once again on The Mind of the King.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Listen, tonight we have an absolutely amazing episode for you guys lined up. Our topic tonight, we're going to dive into the effects of trauma, right? Psychological, emotional effects of trauma. How does that really impact the life of someone? How it impacts the life of your loved one? How it impacts your life? Just overall, how does trauma affects you as an individual?
Trauma. We're talking about trauma. I mean, if you're gonna talk about trauma, bro, you might as well just have fun with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can't be such an intense conversation. You know, we all go through traumatic experiences. When we talk about the trauma, I mean, it could take people to a dark place. It could take people to a place that they had to get counseling out of. You know, so if we could probably be the first type of persons to actually talk about the topic of trauma and how it affects people in life, but still make it funny. I think trauma. Who? My girl. What was it? Was that the Temptations that sang that song?
Yeah.
My girl.
Oh, thinking about my girl.
Yeah, talking about my girl. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm saying thinking about my girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, bro. But I totally agree with you, man. Why not just, put a smile on somebody's face? The conversation is a very powerful, but can be emotional to a lot of people. And I think that when you start to walk down a area or path of bringing back memories, right, or putting into light traumas that persons may have, I think that it really touch a nerve, and it could cause some emotional effects on people. But the truth is, a lot of people go through life, go through relationships, and they are affected by the traumas that they had and still have. But most time don't pay attention to it. Most time don't consider the fact that this is something that would cause me to respond in a particular way. And I remember very clearly this story where there was this woman. She was driving on her way home one day. And while driving home, someone came from the back and they were speeding, trying to overtake, and lost control and, smack their vehicle. And that really changed how that individual felt on the road. Thankfully, she was not hurt physically. She was not damaged physically. But from that point until very recently, she was traumatized and never wanted to drive again. After that one experience, it caused her to make a decision that she does not want to drive again. Every time she sits behind a steering wheel, she remembers that activity. She remembers that in detail. It's almost like it's yesterday. It just happened. It's fresh. And it took her years to get to the point where she was comfortable to drive again. But that is the same thing that happened to many people throughout life, especially growing up. You're young and you're having experiences, and things happen, unfortunate things sometimes, and it stays with you throughout your life. And when you enter into new relationships, meeting new people, networking, and you never pay attention to the trauma that you have until somebody try to point it out at you or for you. Someone says, "Hey, why is it that you are so thin-skinned?" Why is it that you get offended so fast, so easily?
So easily.
Why is it that, you get shaken up every time the light's off?
Yeah.
Right? And there's so many different aspects of life that can bring or a reminder of something that happened in our lives that we are traumatized by.
And it's interesting, man, because when persons go through these traumatic experiences, it changes you. When you go through enough pain in life, when you experience enough heartache and sorrow and trauma, it psychologically conditions you. It changes your perspective on how you receive information. People sharing their opinions. It changes your perspective on people, humanity.
Yes, sir.
The human experience is affected by trauma. And depending on the level of your trauma, you could just feel like everybody's out to get you.
Yeah.
Everybody's out to hurt you because it's undealt with, it's unresolved, and it's unaddressed. And the sad thing about trauma, bro, is that when we have these experiences, we make it harder for the other person, the other person that really wants to love us, the other person that wants to embrace our story, walk alongside us with our journey. It makes it real difficult to have genuine and authentic relationships because it's just we have been psychologically conditioned. As you were talking about that story and how that one situation on the road, on the highway, just completely changed this individual's perspective on driving, I also remembered another story of a rapper of mine that I would listen to, way back when, and he was just sharing his own experiences with his wife and how his wife was raped, and by her own either father or stepdad, and this is a reality for a lot of people, unfortunately. But he was sharing that when it comes to being intimate with his wife, it just brings back those memories and those feelings. And it's I'm smiling because I could hear the frustration in the artist's song. And at one point he was just like, I just feel like to murk dude, I just feel like to just run upon this dude and just end him because you made it worse for me. Here am I'm in love with this woman. I'm doing my best for this woman. She has opened up herself to me to where they have kids together. I have kids with this woman, but at the end of the day, I cannot be fully intimate with my wife. She cannot be fully present because of this traumatic experience.
That happens so often in relationships. When we're talking about traumas, people experience it on different levels, and it affects our social life.
Right.
It affects our intimate life. And when you're in a relationship with someone that have not dealt with their trauma, and sometimes people don't even know that it is what affecting them.
Yeah.
This is the reason why I'm responding the way I'm responding. This is the reason why I am accepting or receiving the information in this manner.
Yeah.
And I often say that when a person chooses not to change their perspective, it affects their relationships just across the board, because you may not see the perspective in which you need to see for the livelihood or the effectiveness of a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you are struggling with something that have affected you in a negative way, and you have not yet dealt with that's unresolved,
right,
and you're in a relationship, it could be any relationship, you now have triggers.
Yeah.
And there are things that are triggering you, and this other person is saying, why are you responding this way? Why you are dealing with this situation in this manner?
Yeah.
How is it affecting you that way?
Right.
And until you are open to acknowledge the fact that you have been traumatized by whatever it may be. Call it rape, call it molestation, call it accidents, call it, right? It could be anything.
Right.
You could be walking down the street and someone jump out of nowhere and scare you, traumatize you,
right?
To the point where you no longer want to walk by yourself anymore, right? Somebody says to you, "Hey, let's take or meet me down the road," and you're like, "Not me," especially at night.
I ain't going nowhere.
You ain't getting me to go nowhere, right? And so many times, trauma stands in the way of growth. Many times trauma stands in the way of productivity. Trauma stops development. Trauma also affects the level of how you succeed. The level in which you're able to accomplish what it is you want to accomplish in your life. What you want to accomplish in your relationships. And I'm saying this because a lot of people have good intentions for their marriage, for their relationship, for their business. And they don't understand that trauma allows them to stay stagnant, to stay where they are because of fear. The fear of repeating that same situation, the fear of having that same thing happen to them again. The fear of experiencing this unwanted experience, and so that they stay stagnant. And I think that many times it is the reason why we are afraid of change. Most people, they're afraid of change. They're afraid of meeting new people because I am stained with the experience of what happened to me the last time I met someone. I opened myself to someone. This is what happened to me, and I don't want that to happen again.
So it's like they stay in their comfort zone.
Correct.
They don't want to get out their comfort zone. And I think they're one of the common responses to trauma, or reactions rather, is to run. To
stay away.
To stay away. And instead of fighting, or facing fears, you kind of just run from it. And that's why a lot of people that go through traumatic experiences, they run away from opportunities, they run away from relationships, they run away from change, because there's that fear of the unknown and the unfamiliar. Because I don't know what this is going to bring me. I don't know what this is going to be like. Let me just stay in my comfort zone, and I deal with, people just being a minister and stuff like that, and just learning how the unseen world works, especially in the realm of demonology and stuff like that. When you open the door of trauma travels in a pack. So the spirit of trauma, the demon of trauma, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't walk alone. You know what I'm saying? There are gangs, there are spiritual gangs, there are demon gangs, and trauma shows up with fear. Trauma shows up with anger. Trauma shows up with anxiety. Trauma, it just shows up with his friends. So when a person that has opened the door to trauma and experienced trauma, you got a lot you got him and his buddies to deal with.
Yes, sir.
You got, the whole issue of trust, the lack of trust. When someone has been traumatized, it's really hard for them to trust. Psychological conditioning, man, it's just so many things that, trauma brings with it that affects the individual. And I know that can be so frustrating because there's so many people out there, bro, that's looking for answers of how to deal. They know they have been psychologically conditioned by what happened to them, and they're trying to break free. They're trying to get out of it. They're trying to change their psyche and their thought patterns. They're even trying to create new neurological thought patterns and stuff like that. But it's so hard, man, because it's like, this is who I have been. I've been hiding this, for 30 years, 35 years, 45, 50 years, 60 years, man. You got grown adults, grandparents that has been traumatized in their toddler years, that never came out and opened up about certain things, and they have just affected their children and possibly even whole generations because it was just hidden, you know, and they choose to hide because they don't really know how to deal with the whole issue, you know.
I agree. We do have adults that's struggling mentally, struggling psychologically, struggling emotionally, and because they have never dealt with it, again, it's unresolved. And many times they say, man, who do I talk to? How do I overcome this fear?
Right.
The fear of trying something new, the fear of going to this place again, the fear of confronting these people again. How do I go about doing that? And it keeps them in a place where they are traumatized to the level that it restrains them.
Mm-hmm.
It restrains them from what's possible. It keeps them bondage. You are in bondage to what your past looks like rather than establishing what your future could be like. Right? And many times in a situation where you feel like I can never get past this, it's really just a decision to let go. And as hard as it may be, you would want to make that decision because you want freedom. You want freedom from anxiety. You want freedom from depression. You want freedom from being trapped in your own emotions and thoughts. And you're being drowned right now. You're drowning in your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own fears. And because you have not allowed yourself the exit, you're still there, and you can be there in cycles over and over again. You could put a smile in your face, but you're still in this cycle. You're still in depression. You're still in anxiety. You're experiencing this cage. Right? Now, you also have people that have been through situations that has affect not just their psyche, but affect their spirit and also their bodies. Right? You have people that have been traumatized, and whenever there's a trigger, whenever something comes up, they really honestly don't know how to deal with it. And they have always deferred go right back to, this is how I know how to deal with it. I'm going to smoke something. I'm going to drink. I'm going to pick up a bottle. Right? I'm going to go have sex.
Coping mechanisms.
That's their coping mechanism. Right? This is how I release my stress. This is how I deal with what I'm feeling. The anxiety I have, the only thing I know to do is to roll up a blunt. I'm going to smoke that. Right? And a lot of people can say what they like, judge however they choose to, but the reality is, if we don't dig deeper to find out exactly what is causing them to live the way they live, to respond to life the way they're responding to it, then we're gonna always just judge. Many people are going through a lot, and they have traumas, even men. Bro, there are a lot of men that have been molested. There are a lot of men that have been sexually assaulted. There are a lot of men that have been raped. And they're going through life because society looks in them and say, hey, you will be scorned. You will be looked down upon. You will be laughed at if you even dare to mention these things. And so you live with this. You go through life. You go through relationships, right? And your experience within that relationship is so much dictated by the trauma. It's so much controlled by what you have experienced and what you have been through, so that everyone around you looks at you and like, why do you do this? Why you get so angry when I do this? Why do you respond so aggressive when I say this? Relationships is packed up with people that have unresolved trauma, and they don't know how to put language to that.
I mean, what I realize, bro, is that there's different forms of trauma, as we mentioned, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, rape. It doesn't have to be molestation. It doesn't even have to be like an accident. It could be something that a person got surprised with, like completely, totally off guard. For example, man, even me, in my own personal life, I was born with a blood condition. And because of that, I had to be in a lot of different hospitals just growing up in these environments. Most of the time I was alone, and I'm like 3 years old. I'm like 9 years old. I'm very young, man. And you're talking about episodes and moments where my body would just be in such an excruciating pain that it's not what you're used to. It's not what your body is used to, and then it's like, I remember one time, man, I was probably like 13, 14 or something like that, and I had an episode and I had to be flown out to another island. I had to be flown out to Guadeloupe. Bro, Guadeloupe speaks French, bro. I don't know no French. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in Guadeloupe. I don't know French. I'm trying to remember some words from my French class. You know what I'm saying?
Bonjour.
Bonjour. I remember telling these nurses, like, I need to eat. I'm hungry. And I could, fromage, you know what I'm saying? Pain, bread, eat. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But for me, like, bro, I had nobody, man. It was my mom couldn't come with me at the time. My dad couldn't come because obviously he had to stay back to work to support, me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm over there in Guadeloupe. I speak English. I can't get I can't get nothing to eat because there's this language barrier. I don't know what's going to be the outcome of this situation. I ain't got no friends, no families around me, and that has been my story quite a bit of times in my life, bro. The same thing happened when I went to Bible college. I was hospitalized a few times, and it's just me. And while I was never, raped or anything like that, those moments in those situations, man, that was traumatic for me.
Yes, sir.
I was alone, so. It did condition me psychologically, especially in the aspect of pain, because this blood condition, if I get too dehydrated and stuff like that, I could go into like shock, and it creates a lot of pain for me. So that traumatic experience and that pain in my body that I would experience kind of made me a bit like stoic, and it made me a bit numb. So when somebody says I'm in pain, I'll be like, you don't know what pain is. You don't know what pain feels like.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And going back to our topic, how does trauma affect our, relationships, our business, different aspects in our life? Bro, I gotta be intentional about my relationship with my son.
Yes, sir.
Because he's young, and he would fall and stuff like that. And for me, it's just like, all right, get up. I don't really run to him to try to pick him up, because I'm so used to experiencing feeling pain that it doesn't matter what people go through. Whether they fall down the stairs and broke their legs, bro, you call that pain? I know what pain feels like, So it kind of made me a little bit less sympathetic and to people where it's just like, oh, I'm hurting, I don't feel good, I'm in pain, whatever. So like, nah, you don't know what pain is.
Got it. I understand that.
Yeah, bro.
I remember you mentioned about having traumas in different ways.
Yeah.
I remember also, hearing and experiencing personally also what it's like to grow up in a house where your parents are fighting.
Yeah.
Right? They're physically at it.
Yep.
They're arguing, and there's so much noise. There's just arguments every night. My father, I remember my dad used to come home drunk.
Yeah.
He was an alcoholic before. And he would come home drunk, and him and my mom would argue, right? And I know what that is, where it's psychologically have an effect on you, right? Man. Personally, I could not perform in school because of what my living conditions were, right? it had a part to play with how my academics were being reflect. You understand?
Yeah.
It reflected based on what was happening. Right. I never really had a physical reason for trauma.
Yeah.
But in terms of emotional, psychological, I've experienced having growing up in a home where I hear my mom, my dad would argue, they would fight, they were physically at it.
Yeah.
Right. And as a young boy, as a young child, hearing that, growing up in a toxic environment, right, it really messed with me. And then to have my dad taken away from me, growing up without a father figure, had an effect on me. Right. And I remember hearing, my peers talk about their dad. Talk about the relationship that they've had with their dad, and they're going to do this. Their dad taught them how to do this and to do that. And I never had that opportunity because that been robbed from me. And I had to remind myself, you will be a dad one day. And if you take this experience and you believe this is what it should look like, this is what it should sound like, you're going to be married one day. And you cannot use this as an example of what it should be, but rather an example of what it should not be. Right? And so I've been traumatized. But I believe that in understanding what should and what shouldn't, and making a decision to move forward and taking that as an example of what I should not do, caused me to be a better person, caused me to build a different home, right? Having a different experience. And so I do believe that trauma comes in different ways. And when we talk about it, I also believe that a lot more people than we think have been struggling with this, have been going through life with traumas and experiencing triggers to those traumas. And they think many times that this is my personality. What do you think, though, about people living this life for so long and experiencing the trauma and the triggers to it, to the point where they think this is who I am, and you have to understand that's just how I operate. Not even knowing that this is trauma and I'm being triggered by these things, hence the reason why I operate the way I operate.
Yeah, man. One of the things with trauma is that it creates beliefs about, it changes your beliefs, it distorts, it changes your perspective. And trauma, it creates an imposter. And I think people that give into the idea that, man, I've been psychologically conditioned because I've hidden this for so long, I've believed this for so long, now this is just who I am. These are my triggers. I'm just gonna deal with my triggers. If I could avoid my triggers, I wouldn't get triggered. You know what I'm saying?
Just don't trigger me.
Just don't trigger me. But it's an imposter. I mean, if you're dealing with trauma out there, you listening, and you want to change, but you felt like you can't, and you've accepted this is who you are. That is not who you are. That is just an imposter. And I would encourage you to be intentional about the truth. Pursuing the truth. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, Jesus, he says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Yes, sir.
I think it's one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, man, because if you could know the truth about something, you could be set free from it. For example, if you know the truth about how money works, you could be set free from poverty.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? If you know the truth about who you are, then you can be set free from the lies that you hear from parents, your friends, society, you know what I'm saying, or even in your own mind.
Yes, sir.
So if you are intentional about pursuing the truth, you will not a peon, you will not commit suicide, you will not a nobody. Like, you have purpose, you have destiny, and it's unfortunate that humans on this planet experience traumatic situations, but that is not the end of your story.
Yes, sir.
And you just got to be intentional about pursuing the truth. For me, man, just to be more transparent, when I would have my episodes, the immediate medical treatment would be opioids, which would be very strong painkillers. You know what I'm saying? So the immediate response would be to take the pain away. Take the pain away. And I told you, this has been happening to me pretty much all my life. And I realized, man, that whenever I experience pain, not only in my body, but any kind of pain, my immediate reaction is to get rid of it. So, anyone that causes me any kind of level, get rid of it. Mm-hmm. To the point it's just like, I just want to get rid of my wife. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Or anybody.
Anybody.
You caused me pain.
You caused me pain. Bye-bye. And I had to deal with that, bro. Yeah. That's something that I had to deal with. And let me just shout out my wife, man.
Shout out
to wifey. Shout out to wifey, man. She's phenomenal. She's an individual that speaks the truth, and I think you need people like that in your corner if you've been traumatized. Someone that's bold enough, a friend that is bold enough to actually tell you the truth, because the truth can set you free. It will set you free.
It does.
And my wife is so understanding. And we've been married for 6 years, and she has dealt with my trauma, and she has dealt with all the other, his boys that he shows up with, and she has spoken the truth to me and just helped me to put things in perspective. And I think that's very important if you're dealing with trauma, perspective.
Yes, sir.
Because that imposter spirit, that imposter that trauma has created will portray a perspective that is false.
That's right.
And if you could pursue truth, be intentional about pursuing the truth, then you will see the true perspective of who you really are, and you can get through this traumatic ordeal.
That's true. If you're out there, man, and you think that you are dealing with trauma, you have dealt with it and you've been experiencing it, listen, we just want to be an encouragement to you, let you know that it is possible. It is possible for you to get over trauma. Yeah. It is possible for you to make a decision to work towards freedom. You will be a total different individual the minute you make a decision that you will not die with this, that you will not allow this to kill you, and you will not allow this to affect any more relationships that you have. Yeah. It is important for you to first accept, hey, this is a trigger, and this is triggering this for me, and I need to change my perspective of how I deal with this. Right. Many times our failures in relationships, our failures in life is because we fail to accept and to say, I am the problem and I need to deal with this. There's nothing wrong with accepting that you've been traumatized by this situation or this thing, right? The next step is to just go and deal with it. And you may need someone, just like Denroy says, listen, his wife has been such a great help getting through these past years, dealing with these things. It could just be that you need someone that you could trust, you could talk to, and to help you get through it. But I guarantee you, the minute you make the decision that you're not going to let this thing affect you anymore. Yeah. You're not going to allow this to determine or dictate what your life looks like, but you're going to grab it by the horns and you're going to deal with it. You're going to get past it. Whatever it takes, whatever you have to do, you're going to do whatever it takes to get past it and to experience true deliverance and true freedom from it. Ladies and gentlemen, listen. We do this podcast not just because we want to talk, but the truth is we believe that they are hurting people. They are people that desire truth, to desire a different perspective, one that God desire right? The perspective that God desires, the perspective that God has for you. What does God think about you as an individual?
Yeah.
We all go through situations in life. None of us are perfect. Nobody. And so at the end of the day, we need somebody, we need something to hold on to and to help us navigate life, to make better decisions. The mind of the king is designed so that we can bring the perspective of God, of life, to our people, to the kingdom of God, to our friends and our families. And so this is just one perspective. If we're dealing with trauma, if you're dealing with trauma, God still desires a holistic life for you.
Right.
God still desires you to be happy, to be loved, to be appreciated, to be celebrated. God believes in you. That's why he sent his son to die for you.
That's right.
And all we're doing is saying, hey, this is the perspective. We all have triggers. We all have stuff to work on.
Yeah.
But if we don't take the time to say, I have been in bondage to this trauma, then there's no way we can get past it.
Yeah.
So if you're dealing with it, if there's something that you think that you can change, I have seen people tried everything, bro.
Yeah.
To get to somebody who's struggling with trauma, and they refuse to accept. In relationship, I've seen people tried everything in a relationship for it to work.
Yeah.
Try everything to show them, hey, this is how we can go about doing this. And they refuse to change because they've seen their dad being an alcoholic and beat their mom.
Yeah.
They've seen their father molest them. They've been abused themselves and said, if this is how I grew up, this is how I'm gonna bring my children up. Can you imagine growing up in a house where your dad was molested, abused, and he thinks that the only way he is to raise his son is to do the very same thing?
Right.
You will grow up in a toxic environment and you will be traumatized.
Yeah.
And that cycle will just go on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of women that's walking around that has been in such an experience that they feel that they can no longer be transparent, open, and vulnerable. And there are people that literally feel like they need to be able to express themselves only the way they know how to.
Yeah.
And so if I grew up in a house that is violent, right? I saw my dad punch my mom, right? Whenever she said something that he does not like, he punched her, right? There are people that grew up in a house, on a home that's like that.
Yeah.
So they feel if I'm in a relationship and my girl or my wife says something that I don't like, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna punch her. People are experiencing real issues.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, if you're one of these people, whether you're in a relationship that you think that this other person refused to change, refuse to accept their wrongs, refuse to listen, refuse to do anything, I'm telling you, it could just be trauma. And it could just be that they themselves has not even recognized or come to grips or come to the understanding that they are struggling with trauma, past incidents that is affecting them in this way.
Yeah, bro. And I mean, before you wrap up, man, I agree with you 100%. Everything that you shared is just on point. And I mean, again, for the person listening to this podcast, it's okay to not be okay. You know, it's okay to not be perfect, but it's not okay to settle for that. It's not okay to stay where you are. And I know that a lot of people has probably given up on you because it's really hard to get support. It's really hard to find somebody that really understands. I know what that's like personally, but I want to tell you that even if everybody give up on you, don't give up on yourself. Don't you dare give up on yourself. And I want you to understand that Jesus loves you, first of all, and you need to love you. It's okay to not be okay. Nobody is perfect. It's okay to not be perfect, but it's not okay to stay in the pits. You always want to be in the position of up or getting up, but never down. never down. Don't allow your situation to defeat you. Don't allow your trauma, your past experiences, the imposter, the lies, the tricks, the personas to really master you, but master it and love yourself. Be intentional about loving yourself. And again, do not give up on yourself. I've seen trauma put people in situations where they really give up on yourself. And when you give up on yourself, you lose that willpower. And when you lose willpower, you pretty much have lost the battle, because it begins with your will, the willingness to change, the willingness to be different. So do not give up on yourself.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. As we wrap this up, man, this has been another episode of The Mind of the King. We've been talking about trauma and the effects of trauma and how it does destroy lives and relationships, and how it can be so subtle that persons just refuse to accept that this is what they're dealing with. And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, if you are listening to this, if you're suffering with trauma, if it's something that you've been dealing with, as Denroy says, man, spend time just learning and loving yourself.
Yeah.
Spend time loving yourself. Never give up. And what you are going through in life, it is not the end, it's just your present.
Right.
You determine what your ends look like. You determine how your end ends, right? How your life ends. What effects you want that to look. How do you want that to look like? Mm-hmm. What you want it to look like. And so I believe even now, as you're listening to this, that you will be inspired, you'll be motivated, you'll be encouraged. All right, don't give up on yourself.
No.
Trust God, and we definitely believe that God will see you through. Yeah. Again, this has been A Mind of a King. This is the next episode. Again, my name is Gavin Shaw.
I'm Denroy V. Gums.
It's been good.